Katie Braden here at the Morningstar Investment Conference, and I'm here with Mary Childs, the author of this brand new book that just came out in March, The Bond King. And there's a bit of history here at the Morningstar Conference with The Bond King. So for those that aren't familiar, Mary, Can you tell us a few stories?
Yes, so I was actually here 8 years ago at what became a very big deal speech that Bill Gross gave, the titular Bond King. He was talking about, the structural alpha strategies that had made PIMCO so successful over the decades, but what ended up happening was he prefaced it with the entire plot of The Manchurian Candidate and references to Justin Bieber and Kim Kardashian, and he was like wearing sunglasses, and it just kind of decimated the understanding of the audience of his actual speech. No one could pay attention. And it was this big moment where people had seen him as this bond investing legend and this, kind of god of the industry. And at this moment, people were kind of like, wait, what's happening? Like, is this guy okay? Like, is this the guy that we have known all these decades?
Yeah, and time kind of flies. So even thinking that was 8 years ago.
Apparently it was 8 years ago.
Right? So a lot has happened since then. So let's talk about what led to this book and the premise of this book.
So in January 2014, the CEO of PIMCO had resigned, and it started this kind of cracking open of what had been going on, that there was all this friction internally. And the newspaper articles that came out about it ended up kind of just getting in Bill Gross's head and causing him to fixate on who had been leaking and causing him to fixate on, the departure of that CEO and what that meant. And he was angry and he was hurt. And a lot of that played out in the media. I think one fun thing about this book is you can go watch that Morningstar Investment Conference speech that he gave. You can watch the Bloomberg TV interviews that he gave around the same time. A lot of the plot points are public. But yeah, it led to this kind of spiral where he was unable to kind of maintain control over what was happening, and his fixation ended up kind of being his undoing.
So you mentioned, and I know as a financial planner as well, like a lot of this was public. So what are you kind of diving into here in the book without giving anything away? Because people should definitely purchase it. But what?
Thank you.
Give us just a little snippet of what's in here versus what we all saw publicly.
Yeah, I got a lot of emails, internal notes between some of the characters, if you will, where they're trying to, in real time, figure out what they're going to do, or they're trying to reconcile, public behavior with corporate strategy and management and, what they're trying to do as a business. So I personally, the emails I mentioned because they're the most precious to me. I think that they're extremely telling and evocative, where, we've all had kind of quiet, ragey corporate emails, I feel like. I don't know. I think that's very common and emotionally accessible. But yeah, they're also just notes from internal meetings and conversations and the real way that things ended up going down at PIMCO.
And what can we learn from this? Are there lessons in here that we can kind of take forward? And
yeah, it's tough, right? It's definitely a what not to do of corporate management transition. I think a lot of firms struggle with that. There's just from a very basic standpoint, if it's a founder-led firm, they became so successful because they're like micromanaging and controlling. So that's always difficult. And this is a good blueprint of what you should avoid. I think the kind of personal lessons are trying to be self-aware and knowing when you've gone too far and like what the kind of interpersonal relationships demand of you. That's really hard. And Bill Gross is famously self-aware, but also, to a point. And I think from an investing standpoint, the thing that I took away from it was this understanding of, knowing when you have a good strategy and knowing how to stick with it, even when times turn against you, when times are tough, when the odds are not in your favor. That's been kind of my favorite takeaway.
Yeah, and I was also, as this was all playing out, thinking about, and I still think about, how we put people on a pedestal sometimes, and especially, the success that Bill Gross had and everything that he achieved, but then also the reminder that we're all human, and even somebody in his position can have a downfall, and not everything turns out the way we planned.
Quite. So I think that's a huge one, is that all of these people are very, very mortal and very human and like subject to the same emotional torment that we all are, and subject to the same insecurities. And even if they've achieved so much, that's something that I think is really interesting, is that Bill Gross achieved so much and was so successful, and so it was almost unfathomable to people that he would be so insecure, and so kind of looking over his shoulder and feeling like he was shy and introverted and didn't want to talk to people, and he was just fighting for the next basis point like the next guy. Like, that is bananas. That's very hard to kind of wrap your mind around as a person, especially working at PIMCO, coming up the ranks like this legend. So I think that that tension was a big part of it too. But yeah, we're all very, very, very human.
Very human. Fabulous. Well, where can people get this book?
Wherever books are sold.
Fabulous. Mary, thank you so much. Looking forward to diving into this. Just all these stories, again, bring us back. Time flies, just all the humanity that comes with it, all the lessons that come with it. Thank you for writing this, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor.